Elijah and I get to see each other all the time.
We do a lot.
We eat together. We do crossword puzzles together. All the fan fiction is true.
He's off fishing in the river and on the rocks and jumping around the rocks and grabs a fish and he's very excited. He did that, dude.
Because when I drop a hook in the water, you can hear the fish laughing. The crucial moment for me was in a screening room when we saw the first dailies of that opening sequence where young Frodo jumps onto Ian McKellen's cart. Because the film can't work unless you believe all those characters are the right size. And if it doesn't work, if you don't believe that there are dwarves and hobbits of the right size, you haven't got a film. And I was sitting in that screening room when they were showing the thing, and they had a rough assembly that they put together. And that wonderful moment where you jump into the cart, and it was absolutely a hobbit and a wizard of different sizes. And McKellen and I were both there, and we both did. And I said to him, "How the hell did you do that, Ian?" And he said, "I've no bloody idea."
I remember when Allie, our oldest daughter, our only child at the time that we were filming, a year and a half or a year later, after principal photography, when the film was about to come out, and we were in this little house, and I had a laptop and got a piece of footage, the teaser trailer, and showed it to her, and she just said, "How does it look so real?" And I said, "Well, you were there. Like, let's pause. When this shot, you were standing right over by the camera." She says, "I know, but," and the funny thing is, it's what she was saying was real looking, was that it was matching her imagination, the reality of the imagination. Because if you turn the lights on and you take some stuff away, it's just, a set and people and whatever. So the idea of what's real, what does it mean to that kind of Velveteen Rabbit, thing? But, we get to see each other on the cast on these, conventions. And Emerald City, I haven't been here in a long time. But being here with John, Elijah and I get to see each other all the time.
We do a lot.
We eat together. We do crossword puzzles together. All the fan fiction is true. So, but for a moment, I want to turn my attention away from Master Frodo and over to this dwarven god, John Rhys-Davies. And you were talking about technology. And you're thinking about Andy Serkis and Gollum, and you're thinking about some of the visual effects. Did you ever read the Bible? Do you remember the book of Job? This was Job. This was Job. Well, the first shot we ever did together was in the Lothlorien woods up in the trees. Oh, yeah? And they hadn't worked out John's costume right yet. So we had on this massive thing that was, he could barely, he's a strong man, he could barely move, and they had to have a huge air conditioner unit pointing up his skirt, trying to make it so that he didn't pass out. Then they start doing the makeup on him, and the makeup is, special effects makeup is being done for 100 years. They were pushing the envelope. They almost killed this guy. His face was peeling off like smitten with boils. Am I wrong? Am I telling the truth? So, sometimes low-tech, mid-tech, high-tech, the journey and the effort that goes into it and the kinds of, sacrifices such as they are that people might not know about are real when you're doing it. So, there you go.
One thing about your question you had asked about, was there something that you had seen on set from a technological standpoint, or a moment that you remember and how it ultimately transpired later? And the first thing that came to my mind was Andy Serkis in his Now, green suit, not for green screen purposes, just sort of, it looked a bit like Gollum, and this is the suit that he would wear on set as Gollum as a reference, because it was before, we weren't doing motion capture at the time. Andy was really a reference pass, and then he continued to drive the animation from there. But he was there physically, and there's the scene, you'll remember it in the movie, where he's off fishing in the river and on the rocks and jumping around the rocks and grabs a fish and he's very excited. He fucking did that, dude. Like on the side of a mountain in this river with lots of rocks. It was very treacherous, and he is climbing on there, and it was so hyper physical and so inspiring that you're like, that's Gollum, and yet, you know, obviously what that ultimately became was yet to be seen. So in rushes, you know, going into it was the upstairs, I think, of the powder horn that they had rushes, the dailies. So we would sit upstairs in this like conference room at the hotel that we were staying at, and we watched that scene, and it's just a guy in a suit running around the rocks like a madman.
You know that.
But the commitment was so there and beautiful, and obviously it's a memorable moment in the movie, you know.
There's a quality in the human spirit that sometimes something won't be denied. It won't be denied. In this particular moment that Elijah's referencing, we were at the top of this mountain, and the way it sort of felt was like we had filmed the main bits, and we were going to be in cars and vans driving and trucks driving back down the mountain, but they had kind of stopped on the side of the road and found a little piece of babbling brook that maybe they could shoot something. And I don't know how long that unit that had been there setting it up, but Andy had been prepping for it for a month. And, you know, so for us it was like, you know, a Thursday at 2:30. For him it was like the Super Bowl. And when they started rolling, he flopped himself down into these rocks, and it was more than the character. He was telling us in the movie, he was telling the director, he was telling the camera people that this is real, this is serious, and no one is going to stop me from giving a massive performance in this movie. Yeah. And we were all like, fuck, okay, wow.
Tolkien sets out roughly what his characters are like and what they sound like. We knew that the elves, for instance, have a lyricism in their voice that is based on the music of the Welsh language, which is very much like that and rather wonderful. But it can also be a great language of power. Let me just give you a little bit, the first word or two of the Lord's Prayer in Welsh. The Lord's Prayer, as you know, goes, "Our Father, which art in heaven," right? In Welsh, it is like this. Ein tad arwyth an y nefoedd. And that is the language of power. And we knew that the hobbits were basically West Country, you know, Somerset, maybe a bit of Dorset, maybe a bit of Devon and Cornwall, a bit there.
Cornwall, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they gave me a tape, a recording. Andrew Jack and Roisin Carty were our dialect coaches and our dialecticians. And they gave me a recording of a farmer. Well, that's a nice shiny apple. And I would say that before every single line. Like, do you remember the Shire, Mr. Frodo? That's a nice shiny apple. Do you remember the Shire, Mr. Frodo?
It's your mantra.
It was a hook. It was the hook. Yeah. The first time I ever did the accent without the dialect coaches, you know, mothering me was for a video game. And it was both terrifying and liberating when I realized it was like a foal standing for the first time. Like, I think I can actually do this.
Which video game?
Oh, I don't know. Lord of the Rings, blah, 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 from the blah, blah, blah. 2004, Lord of the blah, blah, blah.
All of us PS2 players need to know if it was that video game. Elijah, how about you and Frodo's accent?
The accents were really specifically mapped out as they were also articulating based on region, where characters came from, and there was a lot of thought put into it. None of it was accidental. And with Frodo, the thought process was that not having him have a country accent due to being of a slightly more noble blood, being a Baggins, and his uncle kind of showing him a broader worldview, and his accent being reflective of that broader worldview. So RP, as sort of standard received pronunciation, was the choice, so that it was just very, very simple, and that he sounded slightly other, which would, again, just evoke his relationship to Bilbo.
Look, there was only one miserable old son of a bitch on Lord of the Rings. The entire cast was not only gifted, talented, perfectly cast, but they were the most amiable and congenial and delightful and optimistic young actors and old actors that I've ever worked with. They were fantastic. It's just a pity about the old miserable son of a bitch.
It's just not true.
It's
just not true.
Unfortunately, I wore his boots every day.
John's voice may communicate some of that gruff thing, but you have so much joy and humor, and like his boating. He likes to boat. John in a boat in the Cook Strait. Like, John, you can't go in the Cook Strait in your little boat. You're gonna die. But he just has. There's a whimsy in you that is so poetic. I love you.
I'm so glad you mentioned the boat. Yes. Because I actually bought a cheap boat and had it renovated in New Zealand and took it all the way to England, where it promptly sank at mooring.
Oh.
And as for being a fisherman, I should be in the Guinness Book of Records, because when I drop a hook in the water, you can hear the fish laughing.
I watch on TikTok these people who are going to cross, circumnavigate the globe, and they've got their satellite phones and their GPS. John's just like with an oar, just like going to make it.